worlds now, Braegger. Why worlds now, Braegger? Why worlds now, Braegger? Why worlds now, Braegger?
Everyone has chair, that's more chairs over here. My name is Simon Dybbroe Møller, and I'm extremely happy to be able to welcome Braegger to this edition of Why Works Now. As I just explained, Tina was one of the reasons why I wanted to start this series originally. She wrote an amazing book, I think, and she's going to read from that tonight. Just in terms of background, Tina Braegger's practice, to make everything more possible, is repeating one image over and over again in paint. But should I say what it is? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. And she repeats the image of what is called, referred to as the Jerry bear, a bear that is named after its association to the band The Grateful Dead. And Jerry is Jerry Garcia, the lead singer of The Grateful Dead. And it's also a bear that some people believe you always see when you take LSD, I believe.
I guess so, yeah.
So, without further ado, welcome to Tina.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, Simon, and thank you all for being here today. I'm going to read from my book, as announced, and the book has the title The Grateful Dead and the subtitle A Diary by Gabriel Krampus. It's quite small and thin, but I still like to refer to it as a novel. I don't know if that's maybe a bit of a euphemism. And what else do I have to say? I wrote this a while ago. It was published in 2016, I think. And I wrote it from 2013 to 2015, and then it took 1 year to fact check and proofread and all those things, and then it was published in 2016. And I made a list with the chapters and the pages that I'm going to read, and I think it makes the most sense if I just start, and then maybe after I've read a bit, I'm going to explain a little, and then you're also very welcome to ask questions if something is not clear. But it's complicated because I don't see anything. So you have to be loud, and you have to tell me if something with the microphone is not working. Okay. I'm going to start. There is a prologue, but we're going to jump that, and then we're starting with the first chapter. That's chapter 1, Wednesday, March 4th, 2059. This I'm going to put here. Okay. It has been almost 44 years since my wife decided to be buried in the sand. All of her body is covered with sand, except her head. We chose a beach on an island in the Indian Ocean. We wanted to stay together, as far as that is possible for a married couple when one part decides to spend the rest of its life buried in sand. I am a single child, so I never minded being by myself too much. Actually, I get quite some pleasure out of it. We are both artists, and to have an island all by myself was my dream since forever, to be able to work without worldly distractions. My wife had always made conceptual work. After she was buried, many artistic practices, such as painting, drawing, making sculptures, etc., naturally fell away. So now one can certainly call her a conceptual artist. She wanted to be buried in a beautiful place, and our private little island can definitely be described as such. So now for almost 44 years, she has been watching the weather change, the time pass, the ocean come and go. We were lucky to come across this very special small island, which was in the private possession of a collector of my wife's work. The collector had to go to jail for a reason that we could never quite figure out. And it was the government of the nearby main island where the collector was arrested and where the prison stands, who agreed to the collector's suggestion to let us inhabit the island for as long as he would be imprisoned. My wife's collector knew about her intention to be buried in the sand, and that we were looking for a place to realize such an undertaking. He offered us the island right after he became aware of the custody that lay ahead of him. It is 2 p.m., and I am sitting by the window in my studio. Out of the window, I can see my wife's head. Her long white hair is blowing in the wind. 1 hour ago, I went to visit her and fed her a small bowl of strawberries, which grow in the front garden of my studio. It is mostly all she eats, 3 times a day, 1 small bowl of strawberries. They are delicious and very nutritious. Since we moved here, we both eat mostly vegan, and for a while now, our diet has been reduced to almost nothing but those delicious strawberries. It would be so easy to fish here, but I don't have the patience or the time to do it, and my wife obviously doesn't have the physical capacity. I just finished a new body of work. It is a group of huge aluminum frogs, which I crafted myself in the studio. They will be on display in the gardens of the Studley Castle in late May of this year, and we have to figure out the shipping. The older I get, the more I like the security of having things together early enough to be prepared for all eventualities. I couldn't help but look up the shipping company the Studley people usually work with. They seem reliable. Well, I love the peace that comes when I am done with something that has been on my mind for some time. Now I can just sit here and watch my wife's long white hair blow in the wind. So this was chapter 1. And this is the situation that the subtitle already says it. It's a diary, so it's kind of a fake diary because I wrote the book. And the protagonist in the book's name is Gabriel Krampus, and he is this 80-something-year-old man. And then the book is structured so that we have the text, like the diary is one part of the text, and that's kind of very like boring and secure, and it's always the same situation and not much is happening. It's just two old people on this island, and then the husband writes the diary, Gabriel Krampus writes the diary, and his wife is buried, and then a little bit like a chorus or something, we have the reappearing scene of the wife's long white hair blowing in the wind. Yes, okay, so one part is the text, and then the other part that's always on one page of the book, and then the other part, which takes up almost as much space, or actually even more space than the text, the running text, is the footnotes. And I think I'm just going to read a footnote now, and then if we have more questions, or with we, I mean you, or maybe if I come across something I need to explain, then I'm going to explain. Okay, so this is footnote 2a. The jaguarundi is a diurnal, feral, or wild cat, native to South America and Brazil, as well as South Africa and the Middle East. There have also been sightings of jaguarundis reported from New Mexico. Not many jaguarundis are left. The current estimated population worldwide, including the 4 specimens living as a family in the Berlin Zoo, amounts to 1,453, which is a rather small number if you keep in mind the jaguarundi's impressive ability to acclimate in new conditions. The coloration of an average jaguarundi is either red or black, or a mix of both colors, resulting in a reddish-black. The black breed has oftentimes been mistaken for a black panther, although the jaguarundi is significantly smaller than a black panther. The jaguarundi kitten, as well as the jaguarundi mother, make a noise similar to a calling bird, whereas the voice of the jaguarundi kitten is on a higher frequency than the one of the jaguarundi mother. The jaguarundi father is mostly quiet. In a battle situation, you would hear him roar, similar to the roaring of a lion, but more modest. The jaguarundi is slightly larger than a house cat and slightly smaller than a bobcat. As a result, cases of a mistaken yet stolen identity are not a rare thing. However, the jaguarundi is fairly easy to recognize, be it for its small round ears or its short legs that seem out of proportion to its body and cause it to run in an otter-like fashion, giving rise to the colloquial term for the animal of otter cat. They are also called weasel cat, small little dog, cat dog, or weasel cat dog, depending on which group of human beings one mentions the species to. Sometimes the jaguarundi hangs out in the swamp or in the desert. The jaguarundi likes to spend its free time, Saturdays mostly, in a not too crowded mall or a shady hallway. Although the existence of the animal has not been confirmed yet, there have been roadkill incidents in which the jaguarundi was involved. Subspecimens, such as the long jaguarundi or the white jaguarundi, can be compared with a domestic cat and are often found in a sunny, sandy, and dusty region. Some of the white jaguarundi breeds, for example, live in the Uyuni Sol Desert in Bolivia. Both the long tail and the elongated body of the jaguarundi are evolutionary traps. The jaguarundi tail can be easily pulled due to its extraordinary length. The Jaguarundi is a broadly animistic or even shamanic concept which has entered the English language from anthropology, ethnography, and sociology. The Jaguarundi guides, helps, or protects individuals or groups of individuals. Example given, families, friends, et al., especially in Eurasia and Western Europe, as well as in dungeon camps all over the world. The elective affinity of a Jaguarundi to certain human beings is not yet proven. Animal scientists are still working on finding evidence of the phenomenon. Animal shelters for Jaguarundis are about to be built in the streets of Berlin to protect trolling or horny Jaguarundis that come to the city for a chase. Tina Braegger, Braegger's Life of Animals, Cologne, Delphin Verlag, 2013. Chapter Carnivora, Feliodea, Felidae, Feline, Puma, Jaguarundi. Pages 271 and following. So this is an example of a footnote, and in contrast to the text, which is kind of like the boring everyday life of the couple, the footnotes exist, at least in some parts of those made up, like somehow scientific in the sense that they sound a little bit like science, but they're fictional. Then I made this little selection of the things that I'm going to read, and I don't even really know if they make much sense, but I looked the following footnotes and the following parts of the text are a little bit more related to the Grateful Dead bear, which is the motif that I keep painting, as Simon told us earlier. And yeah, I think, so there is the text, there is the footnotes, and then sometimes there is footnotes within the footnotes. And one of the things that I was trying to do when I wrote the book was to capture this thought process that probably a lot of people know, or maybe I can only speak for myself. But it happens, to me it happens that when I think of something and then I think of the next thing and then I think of the next thing, and then in the end I don't even know what I was thinking about anymore. Or maybe the situation when you're comfortable on your couch and then you stand up and you go to the fridge and you open the fridge and you're like, why did I just open the fridge? What was the plan? And you have no idea why you're even in the kitchen. So I was trying to make a book that has this effect. So sometimes when you read a footnote and you get lost in the footnotes and you come back to the running text and you don't even know what's happening anymore. So that was one thing that I was trying to do, and the other thing I was trying to do, and that would need like a longer explanation, which I'm gonna give the people that are gonna be there for the studio visits tomorrow and on Friday, like in more detail, but I'm just gonna say that I had been working with the motif of the bear, of the Grateful Dead bear, since 2011, and I started making inkjet prints on canvas, and I made them by using a Photoshop filter that was called the oil painting brush. And I don't have an image, unfortunately, not here today, but tomorrow and on Friday I will. Those prints, they were small-ish, they were like 80 centimeters, and they didn't look like oil paintings, they looked a little bit psychedelic. So there was a bug in my Photoshop that made the oil painting brush look like an LSD hallucination. And I worked with this filter, and I made those bears for like a period of a couple of years, or maybe 1 or 2 years, and then I updated the program, and after that the bug was gone. So when I used the oil painting brush filter, those little bear prints, paintings, whatever you want to call them, didn't look like psychedelic prints anymore. They looked like shitty oil paintings. And then I was thinking I should actually just paint the bears myself, but before I was thinking about that, I was thinking about how the bear, like the colorful psychedelic bear, doesn't really go with the name of the band, which is the Grateful Dead. I was thinking, I know a lot about this. Like, the longer I work with the motive, the more I know about the band and like the origin, where it comes from. But when I first heard that this bear was called the Grateful Dead bear, I was thinking, what's the connection? And that's why I wrote this book. And then when I finished writing the book, I realized that the Grateful Dead bear doesn't even really appear in the book, except from like a bunch of times in the footnotes. And I'm going to read the one time that it's mentioned in the running text is in the middle of the book. I'm going to read that, and that's going to lead us to the first footnote about the bear. And if you get tired, if this gets too complicated, you just tell me, because then we're going to stop. Okay, so I have to find the page. We're now on page 55. Okay. Oh, wait. We're not at the bear now. This is not. We're almost there. This is another footnote. I mixed something up. Okay, so you're going to need a little bit of context here. Okay, so the husband, Gabriel Krampus, lives on the island with his wife, and the wife is buried in the sand, and they have this normal, peaceful life, and nothing ever happens, except one day an unexpected event happens, and it leads to a series of unexpected events. They have a big thunderstorm, and a few things break, so the guy, Gabriel Krampus, has to take the boat to the mainland and buy supplies to fix the things. And on the mainland, he runs into a young woman, and the young woman is called Esmeralda. And Esmeralda goes back to the lonely island of Gabriel Krampus with Gabriel Krampus, and then she starts a conversation with his wife. So right now, we are at, the date is Tuesday, April 7th, 2059, and Gabriel Krampus writes in his diary about the conversation his wife had earlier with Esmeralda. Okay, so anyhow, after a few months, Esmeralda realized that no matter what drug she consumed, be it LSD, footnote 29, I'm not going to read that, Sigmar Gabriel, footnote 30, that's what I'm going to read once I finish the sentence, or psilocybin, 31, I'm not going to read that either. One could name any hallucinogen or non-hallucinogen. She had a reappearing vision. It was the vision of a bear, Esmeralda told my wife, a very colorful bear. So now I'm reading footnote 30. Sigmar Gabriel, footnote A. Footnote A. Sigmar Gabriel, September 12th, 1959 to May 13th, 2056, was a German politician who served as Minister of Environment 2005 to 2009. He was chairman of the SPD, Social Democratic Party, since 2009. Minister of Economic Affairs and Energy and Vice Chancellor of Germany from 2013 to 2023. Gabriel was the second child of the nurse Antoni Gabriel and the priest Walter Gabriel in Goslar, Germany. His parents divorced when he was 3. His older sister, Gudrun, could stay with their mother, whereas he had to live with his father and his grandmother, Lina Gabriel, against his will for the first 10 years of his life in a housing complex in Goslar, Jürgenol, Germany. In 1969, his mother finally received sole custody after many years of juristic conflict, and Gabriel moved in with her. At the end of the 1970s, Gabriel found out that his father had stayed a National Socialist, even during the post-war era. Gabriel broke contact to his father, and they never talked for the next 25 years. Sigmar Gabriel tried to come to terms with their past, but Walter Gabriel stayed a Nazi until his death in 2012. Sigmar Gabriel was a Protestant and married twice. He had a daughter with each of his wives. The first was born in 1989 and the second in 2012. I've missed footnote Roman 1 somewhere, which says he kept his position after Daniel Buchholz replaced Angela Merkel as Chancellor in 2017, after a rough political period in Germany due to the international refugee crisis, which started in late 2014. Now back to footnote 30. Sigmar Gabriel, also known under the name of fire or stash, is a psychedelic drug with phenethylamine and amphetamine chemical classes. It was presumably first synthesized in 1985 by Alexander Shulgin, who describes it in his book PIHKAL, Phenethylamines I Have Known and Loved, footnote B. Complicated. Footnote B, Alexander Shulgin and Anne Shulgin, PIHKAL, A Chemical Love Story, United States, Transform Press, 1991, page 978. Okay. Unlike simple amphetamines, Sigmar Gabriel is considered a chemical which influences the brain's cognition and perception. The strongest supposed effects include open and closed eye visuals, increased awareness of sound and movement, and euphoria. In PIHKAL, Shulgin refers to Sigmar Gabriel as an archetypal psychedelic. Its full-range visuals, audio, physical, and mental effects show exhilarating clarity and an overwhelming, humbling, interweaving impact. Openly available for sale from designer drug vendors, as hydrochloride salt, the dosage requires precision to the milligram. It is easily laid onto blotter paper and misrepresented as LSD, which creates significant additional danger in the chance of polysubstance use. The toxicity of Sigmar Gabriel has not been fully tested yet and is not known to have the same safety profile as LSD. It can be particularly unsafe compared with LSD for those suffering from hypertension, as amphetamine compounds are known to cause sharp increases in systolic blood pressure. Some users have reported nausea, chest pains, and vasoconstriction. Sales of Sigmar Gabriel on blotting paper and in capsules were noted in late 2005 and again in late 2007. In April 2023, a case of death due to Sigmar Gabriel was reported. The source does not specify whether death was caused by the drug alone. The name Sigmar Gabriel was meant as a tender gesture from Shulgin towards Gabriel. Shulgin, almost 35 years older, had befriended Sigmar Gabriel, even though they never met in real life. They started a letter correspondence in the early 1980s, when Gabriel had a turbulent phase of his life and experimented with psychedelics for a while. This was, of course, never publicly discussed. The during the time of his life, and it was Gabriel's older daughter who came across it as she cleaned out her father's belongings after his death. Okay. So this was another example for a footnote, and in the running text, the first appearance of the bear. I'm going to check the time quickly. Okay, hello? Oh. Do you still have energy to go on a little bit? Okay. Okay, now I'm jumping back to the running text, which is going to lead us to the first Grateful Dead bear footnote. Okay, here my wife interrupted her. Do you mean a kind of a psychedelic, colorful bear? A bear that seems to be dancing or maybe marching? She asked, and Esmeralda agreed. Well, my wife told her that could be the Grateful Dead's marching bear. Footnote 32. As mentioned before, see also footnote 3G, pages 20 to 22. And now we're going to go back. To footnote 3G. The Grateful Dead paintings are inkjet prints of colorful psychedelic marching bears on canvas. Oh, there is something I have to say here quickly. So the longer I work with the motif, the more I know about where it comes from and like all those facts. But when I first started working with the bear, I had no knowledge about the Grateful Dead or where it came from. So it was whilst writing the novel that I kind of did a little bit of research. And there are certain things that I know better now. And in this footnote is one mistake, which is that I'm telling where the bear is coming from, and there is the name of the cover artist who came up with the bear, and that's Bob Thomas, and that's not the same person as the LSD producer and the sound engineer, whose name is Stanley Owsley, but I didn't know that at the time. But you're gonna see now. Yeah, it seems important to mention that in case anybody is very familiar with the history of the Grateful Dead. Okay. So, the Grateful Dead paintings are inkjet prints of colorful psychedelic marching bears on canvas. The motif of the bear goes back to ancient Greece and the Romans. After that, it reappears several times in the history of mankind. Footnote Roman 1. The reader will come across the bear again later in our story. See also the diary entry. From Tuesday, April 7th, 11 p.m., pages 55 to 68, including footnotes 33 to 38. In the history of mankind. It is one of the logos of the Grateful Dead, a 60s rock band from San Francisco. They released a record called The History of the Grateful Dead in 1973, which they worked on with a sound engineer. That's not true. That's the cover artist, called Bob Thomas, who also happened to be their acid dealer. I'm just going to read it as I wrote it, but it's not true. They asked him to contribute with a little drawing or something for the booklet that would accompany the album. Since Bob Thomas was a very big and tall guy, his friends called him the Bear. That's actually the other guy, Stanley Owsley. He came up with a cartoonish figure of a colorful psychedelic marching bear. It had a look that was typical for the time, as if the viewer were on acid. LSD hallucinations always look alike, no matter who consumes the drug. Footnote Roman 2. This is because the human brain is capable of the production of a certain style of images under the influence of certain psychedelics. Okay. The bear was one of the first cultural logos that went around the world. The original drawing Bob Thomas made was a series of 4 different figures. It's also not true, it's actually 5 different figures, which next to each other illustrate a sequence of movements of a marching or dancing bear. The fans of the band were very intrigued by the motive and came up with their own colorful versions of the drawing. The band liked the drawings by their fans and used them for flyers or posters. That way, an interesting back and forth of the figure started and the bear developed over time. Even though the members of the band are long dead, the fans are still alive. They call themselves Deadheads. The movement is ongoing. One can still find new drawings and versions of the bear every day on the internet. The name of the band goes back to the folktales of many cultures. The Grateful Dead is the spirit of a deceased person who bestows benefits on the one responsible for his burial. In the prototypical story, the protagonist is a traveler who encounters the corpse of a debtor, to whom the honor of proper burial has been denied. After the traveler satisfies the debt, or in some versions, pays for the burial, he goes on his way. In another version of the story, burial is prescribed for religious reasons, but prohibited by civil authorities. It is this version that forms the theme of the apocryphal book of Tobit, 225 to 175 before Christ in the Old Testament. The hero is soon joined by another traveler, sometimes in the form of an animal, most likely a jaguarundi, or in the story of Tobit, an angel, who helps him in a dramatic way. In some stories, the companion saves the hero's life. In others, he helps him obtain a prize. In many versions, the companion offers to aid the hero, but only on condition that they divide the prize. Then, as the hero is about to comply, the companion reveals himself as the grateful spirit of the deceased, whom the hero helped to bury. Okay. And I think that's like one of the examples how like the bear does appear in the book. It's more like this, actually really in the sense of a spirit who is somehow present, but it's not the main character, or it's not the protagonist. The protagonist is this old guy, or like this man, Gabriel Krampus. And because my work is so much about the bear, I'm going to read another footnote, another example of a Grateful Dead bear footnote after I've continued in the running text for a little bit. I'm going to read a sequence of the running text, and then I'm going to read 2 more footnotes. So we're going to go back to page 61. Where Gabriel Krampus's wife told Esmeralda that could be the Grateful Dead's marching bear. And that led us to footnote 32. And then Esmeralda said that could make sense. Tell me more about that bear, she begged my wife. And my wife told her that the motive of the bear goes back to ancient Egypt, footnote 33. And ancient Greece. Footnote 34. I'm going to read that later. And the Romans. Footnote 35. It was also known as the Indian god Akasha. My wife told Esmeralda that the bear reappeared after a long time as the mascot of the band The Grateful Dead. In the context of the band, the bear had become such a powerful icon that its influence on popular culture and on the way the world perceived America was undeniable. In 1997, the Grateful Dead bear became the first comic figure in history to accede to the presidency of the United States. Footnote 37, then I'm going to read that one too. Esmeralda was impressed. She never heard of a band called the Grateful Dead, and she didn't know that the comic bear used to be president of the United States. I knew about that bear, and since I am from that generation, of course I knew that he was president of the United States. It seems worth mentioning that he even got re-elected after his 4-year period of office. I liked him and his politics. He was a smart Democrat with a good sense of humor, and he had a way with economy. I didn't know or couldn't remember so well the role he played in ancient times, but I know the rock band The Grateful Dead was important to our parents' generation. Footnote 38. So, this is footnote 34. In Greek mythology, there was a cult of a colorful bear, which was known under the name Evcharistothanatos, Greek for Grateful Dead. Evcharistothanatos was one of the primordial deities, the first entities or beings that came into existence. He was the personification of the upper air. The bear embodied the pure upper air, which the gods breathed. As Aristophanes wrote, footnote A, a Greek comedy writer from late antiquity, Evcharistothanatos was the son of Erebus, darkness, and Nyx, night, and the brother of Hemera, day. According to Damascius, footnote B, a philosopher from late antiquity, Evcharistothanatos, ether, air, Erebus, and chaos, the primeval void, the first thing to exist, were siblings, and the offspring of Kronos, time. The ancient Greeks said that the world began as a cosmic egg, encircled by Kronos and Ananke, inevitability. Together they squeezed the egg with great force, until the world divided into 2 hemispheres. After that, the atoms sorted themselves out. The lighter and finer ones floated above and became the bright air, ether, Evcharistothanatos, and or Uranus, and the rarefied wind, chaos, while the heavier and dirtier atoms sank and became the earth, Gaia, and the ocean, Pontos, Oceanus. Mary Marlon, Gods of Ancient Greece, New York, DK Eyewitness Travel 2045, Chapter 12. Overview, pages 224 and following. Also, maybe I didn't mention that before, but you probably realized that it plays in the future. So I wrote it in the past, obviously, and it plays in the future. And I also wrote it before, like, Trump got elected, so some of the things aged better than others, I guess. And this leads me to the last thing that I'm reading, the last footnote I'm reading, which is footnote 37. If you have some more patience. Yes? Okay. Okay. In 1969, the 53rd quadrennial presidential election of the United States, the Grateful Dead bear, former mascot of the 1960s rock band The Grateful Dead, was legally elected President of the United States. The election was held on Tuesday, November 5th, in 1996. It seems important to mention that the comic figure managed to become President of the United States before an African American, footnote A, or a woman, footnote B. Footnote A, Barack Obama, American Democrat, born August 4th, 1961, was the 44th President of the United States and the first African American to hold the office. He was elected in November 2008 and inaugurated as president on January 20th, 2009. Footnote B. Hillary Clinton, October 26, 1947 to November 27, 2023, was the 45th President of the United States. I'm sorry. And the first woman to hold the office. She was elected in November 2016 and inaugurated as president on January 23rd, 2017. She won by a close vote against Donald Trump, an American Republican and entertainment entrepreneur, real estate tycoon, and billionaire who became famous because of his obtrusive behavior in the media. Only 3 days after Hillary Clinton was elected, he died by choking on a piece of nut from an M&M. Footnote Roman 1. M&Ms are colorful button-shaped chocolates produced by Mars Incorporated, similar to and inspired by Smarties. Footnote 1 star. Smarties were colorful chocolate lensoids launched by Nestle, footnote 2 stars, in 1937. Nestle, a Swiss transnational food and beverage company formed in 1905, was the largest food company in the world until it went bankrupt in 2021 because of its debts to suppliers. Another important candidate in the race for presidency was Francis J. Underwood, born around 1959, a fictional character from Gaffney, South Carolina, disqualified by public opinion because of his ambiguous sexual preferences. Peter Marlon, American History Happening Today, New York, DK Eyewitness Travel, 2063, page 37. Yes, that was that. And I think you get the idea. I could continue and read more, and some of it would make sense, and some of it wouldn't. But I think there is also a copy of the book in the library, in Simon's artist book library, so if you're interested in reading the full thing, it's very thin. Yeah, you would be through in a couple of hours, I guess. Okay, thank you very much.